Why would a sheriff drag a young woman across open prairie in broad daylight and call it justice? What kind of law needs chains instead of truth? What kind of town believes a badge, but never the girl bleeding in the dirt? She was 21, barefoot, barely breathing, and nobody asked her name. 2 deputies pulled the chain like they were hauling broken cattle. The sheriff stood behind them, clean coat, steady hands, no doubt in his eyes. And then there was one man who didn't move, didn't shout, didn't reach for his gun. He just watched. And when she tried to stand and failed, he finally spoke. She can't walk anymore. The wind moved slow across the Kansas prairie that afternoon, carrying dust and the dry smell of summer grass, not far from Fort Dodge. The road cut through open land where a man could ride for miles and never see a fence, never hear a voice, never be asked what he had done or what he planned to do. That was the kind of place where truth could get buried easy.
If you've ever seen something like this and knew it wasn't right, go ahead and subscribe. Stories like this don't get told enough.
Evelyn Hart lay face down in the dirt, her fingers curled into the ground like she was trying to hold on to something that wasn't there anymore. Her dress was torn, her skin marked with bruises and dust, and her breath came shallow, like every inch of air had to be earned. The chain around her wrist dragged behind 2 men who didn't look down at her once. Deputy Caleb Pike walked ahead with a grip that never loosened, his jaw tight, his eyes fixed forward like he had somewhere better to be. Mason Drury followed close, pulling the slack, making sure she didn't stop moving for too long. They had done this before. That much was clear. Sheriff Gideon Rusk stood a few steps behind them, boots clean, coat dark against the yellow field, one hand resting near his belt, the other hanging loose like he had nothing to prove. His badge caught the sunlight just enough to shine. He looked like the law. That was the problem. She's stalling, Caleb muttered, glancing back once. Girl knows how to play weak. Sheriff says she stole a horse, but nobody here ever saw her ride one. Thing is, she ran from a wagon nobody in this county was supposed to ask about. She ain't playing, Mason said, though his tone held no concern. Just tired. Rusk said nothing at first. He watched Evelyn the way a man might watch a stray animal that wandered too far from its place. Not angry, not rushed. Just certain. She'll walk, Rusk said finally. They always do when they know what's good for them. Evelyn heard that. Her body moved before her strength agreed with it. She pushed against the ground, her arms shaking, her knees slipping in the dirt. For a moment it looked like she might make it. Then her legs gave out. She fell again, harder this time. Her breath breaking in her chest, her voice caught somewhere between a cry and nothing at all. Caleb sighed like he had been inconvenienced. He pulled the chain without warning. Evelyn's body dragged forward a few inches, her dress catching on dry grass, her skin scraping against the ground. That was when the horse stopped. The man sitting on it had been there long enough to see everything, but not long enough to belong to any of it. His hat cast a shadow over his eyes, and his coat worn from years that had not been kind, and his posture said more about patience than fear. Jonah Vale had seen men die for less than this. He had seen law twisted before. He had even worn a badge once, but he had not seen it done this openly in a long time. He swung one leg over and stepped down from the saddle, slow, steady, like a man who understood that once he moved forward, there would be no stepping back. Caleb noticed first. His hand hovered near his gun, not quite drawing, but close enough to make the message clear. "This ain't your business," Caleb said. Jonah didn't answer. He walked closer, his eyes moving from the chain to Evelyn to the sheriff. Rusk's expression shifted just enough to show recognition. "Well now," Rusk said, voice low, almost amused. "Didn't expect to see you out here." Jonah stopped a few feet away. He looked down at Evelyn, at the way her chest rose and fell, at the way her hands barely moved anymore. Then he looked up at the men holding the chain. "She can't walk anymore," he said. It wasn't loud. It wasn't a threat, but it settled into the air like something final. Caleb let out a short laugh. "That's so." He pulled the chain again, harder this time. Evelyn didn't move, not even an inch. That was when the silence changed. Mason shifted his stance. Rusk's hand moved closer to his gun. The wind seemed to hold its breath, like the prairie itself was waiting to see what kind of man Jonah Vale had become. Rusk took a step forward. You still think you get a say in how things are done?" he asked. Jonah didn't look away. Not this time. Not again. Because years ago he had looked away once, and it had cost him everything. The badge, the name, the truth. Now it stood right in front of him again, chained to the dirt, breathing its last honest breath. And the question wasn't whether he could stop it. The question was whether he would, because once he did, there would be no going back to being a man without a name. No more riding past trouble, no more silence, only consequences, only blood or truth or both. And somewhere behind all that dust and pain, there was still one thing nobody had answered. If the law itself was the crime, then who in this land still had the right to call it justice? Jonah didn't wait for the dust to settle. He moved, slower than he wanted, but steady enough, controlled enough to matter. Caleb went for his gun first, like most men do when they think a badge gives them the edge. Jonah stepped in before the draw was clean, his hand striking Caleb's wrist, turning the barrel away. The shot cracked into empty air. Mason fired next. That one came closer, too close. Jonah shifted, the bullet cutting past his shoulder, close enough to feel the heat. He didn't waste time thinking about it. He closed the distance and drove the butt of his Colt into Mason's jaw. The man dropped hard, dust rising around him. Caleb tried again. Didn't get the chance. Jonah hit him once, clean and final, and the deputy folded into the ground like a man who had run out of reasons to stand. For a moment, it was quiet. Just the wind, just the sound of Evelyn trying to breathe. Rusk didn't draw. That told Jonah everything. A man like Rusk didn't reach for a gun unless he knew he'd win. And right now, he wasn't sure. Rusk studied him, eyes narrow, mind working. "You just made yourself a dead man," Rusk said. Jonah didn't answer. He was already kneeling beside Evelyn, pulling the chain loose from her wrist, his movement steady, careful. He took a canteen from his saddle and held it out. She flinched at first, couldn't help it. Then she saw his eyes, not soft, not the kind of look stories like to talk about, but honest. That was enough. She drank, slow at first, then like it might be the last water she'd ever taste. Jonah waited, didn't rush her, didn't ask questions yet. Russ turned away like the whole thing bored him. "This ain't over," he said, mounting his horse. "You bring that girl into Dodge, you won't make it past the first street." Then he rode off, leaving his men in the dirt. Jonah watched him go, not with anger, with memory. He had seen that man ride away before, years ago. Different road, same feeling in his gut. Evelyn tried to speak, but her voice came out dry. "They'll come back," she said. Jonah nodded. "Yeah, they will." He helped her sit up, slow, giving her time to find her breath again. "You got a name?" he asked. She hesitated, like names didn't mean much anymore. "Evelyn," she said finally. "Evelyn Hart." Jonah nodded once. "Jonah." He didn't say the rest. Didn't need to. Evelyn looked at him closer now. "You're not one of them?" She said, "No." "You used to be," she added. Eyes drifting to the way he moved, the way he watched the road, Jonah let out a quiet breath. "Used to be a lot of things," he said. That was all she got, for now. He stood and brought his horse closer, checking the saddle, the straps, the weight. "We can't stay here," he said. "Not if you want to keep breathing." She tried to stand, didn't make it far. Her legs gave out again, just like before. Jonah caught her before she hit the ground. No surprise on his face. He'd already figured that part out. "She ain't lying," he muttered to himself. "Not about that." He lifted her up, steady, like she didn't weigh much at all, and set her on the horse. Evelyn winced but didn't complain, didn't have the strength for it. Jonah handed her the reins, though he kept a hand near the saddle to keep her balanced. "You stay awake," he said. "That's your job." She gave a faint nod. "Where are we going?" she asked. "Someplace quiet," Jonah said. "Someplace Rusk. Don't look first." They moved off the road, cutting across the prairie instead of following the trail. Jonah led the horse on foot, keeping low, using the land the way a man does when he's spent years avoiding trouble, or chasing it. For a while, neither of them spoke. Just the sound of boots in dirt, the creak of leather, the wind. Then Evelyn said something that made Jonah slow down. "He's not just a sheriff," she said. Jonah glanced up at her. "No," she swallowed, steadying herself. "He's moving girls," she said. "Not just me." "A lot of them." Jonah didn't stop, but something in his posture changed. "How many?" he asked. "I don't know," she said. "Enough that they stopped counting names, that they just call it shipments." That word hung in the air. Cold, ugly, and real. Jonah had heard it before, a long time ago, back when he still wore a badge and thought the worst kind of crime was the one you could see. "What else did you hear?" he asked. Evelyn looked down at her hands, still marked from the chain. "They keep them somewhere first," she said, "before they move them. I heard him say it. The sheriff." Jonah stopped walking. Now he looked at her fully. Say what Evelyn met his eyes, and for the first time, there was something stronger than fear in them. "I heard him say the jail," she said quietly. That was the moment everything shifted. Not louder, not faster, just deeper. Because Jonah Vale knew that jail, knew every wall, every door, every place a man could hide something he didn't want found. And if she was telling the truth, then the worst thing in Dodge City wasn't outside the law. It was wearing it. Jonah took a slow breath, then looked toward the horizon where the town sat, quiet and unchanged, like it always had been. Only now it wasn't. Not anymore. Because if the jail was part of it, then this wasn't just about saving one girl. This was about tearing something out by the root. And that kind of thing didn't come easy. Jonah started walking again, a little faster this time. "We're not going to Dodge," he said. "Not yet." Evelyn frowned. "Then where Jonah didn't look back. Somewhere I can decide if you're telling me the truth," he said. A pause, then softer. "And somewhere I can figure out how deep this goes." The prairie stretched wide ahead of them, empty and quiet. But for the first time, it didn't feel empty at all. It felt like something was waiting. And if what Evelyn said was true, then the next move Jonah made wouldn't just decide her fate. It would decide whether a whole town was built on a lie. So the question wasn't whether he would go back. The question was, what would he find waiting for him under that jail when he finally did? Jonah didn't head back to Dodge City. Not yet. A man doesn't walk straight into a place like that when the sheriff wants him dead and half the town still believes the badge, and he needed time. He needed quiet, and more than anything, he needed to know if Evelyn was telling the truth. They reached the river near nightfall. Arkansas River ran low that summer, slow water cutting through mud and stone, with tall grass bending along the banks. A lined shack stood not far from there, half broken, door hanging loose, but still good enough to keep the wind off. Jonah helped Evelyn down from the horse. This time she could stand. Barely. Her legs shook, but they held. That was enough. Inside the shack, Jonah lit a small lamp. Nothing fancy, just enough light to see faces and hands. He handed her a piece of cloth and a small tin of salve. "Clean what you can," he said. She nodded, quiet, focused, no complaining, no tears, just work. Jonah stepped outside while she did it. Giving her space, he leaned against the wall, eyes on the horizon, listening to the night come alive. Crickets, wind, distant water. Same sounds he had heard years ago, back when things were simpler, or maybe he had just been younger. When he came back in, Evelyn looked different. Still worn down, still hurting, but there was something steadier in her eyes now, like she had made a choice somewhere along the way. "You're not running," Jonah said. She shook her head. "No point." He sat across from her, resting his hat on his knee. "Then start talking," he said. She didn't rush, took a breath first. "My sister came here 3 months ago," she said. Rose Hart. She got a letter. Said there was work in Dodge, kitchen work. Good pay. Jonah didn't interrupt. I didn't hear from her again. Evelyn went on. So I came looking, asked around, he found a woman near the train yard that said she knew about the jobs. Jonah's jaw tightened just a little. I said, yes, Evelyn added. Thought I was getting closer to Rose. She looked down at her hands. I was getting closer, just not the way I thought. Jonah had heard stories like that before. Too many. They put you in a wagon, he said. She nodded, covered it, told us to stay quiet, said we were being moved to better work. How many? 6, she said. Maybe more before me. They don't keep names long, just numbers or nothing at all. That word again. Not names. Jonah leaned back slightly. And Ruska, he asked. Evelyn didn't hesitate this time. I saw him. She said, not at first, but later. He came by, checked on things like it was normal. Jonah looked down for a second. Just one, then back up. What did he say, he asked? Evelyn swallowed. He said they couldn't keep girls too long above ground. She said it draws attention. Jonah's eyes narrowed. Above ground, he repeated. She nodded. That's when I heard about the jail. The room went quiet. Even the wind seemed to ease off. He said something about a cellar. She added, under the jail. Said it was temporary. Just until the wagons were ready. Jonah stood up, slow, measured. He walked to the door and looked out into the dark. That jail. He knew every board of it, every nail, every inch of dirt beneath it. Or at least he thought he did. Evelyn watched him. You believe me? She asked. Jonah didn't answer right away. He had learned a long time ago that belief wasn't something you gave easy. Not in a place like this. Not after what he had been through. But lies had a sound, and truth had one too, and what she was saying didn't sound like something made up. It sounded like something remembered. Painfully, Jonah turned back to her. If you're lying, he said, you picked the wrong story. I'm not, she said. He believed that part, more than he expected to. He grabbed his coat and checked his gun. Get some rest, he said. We move at first light. Where, she asked. Jonah paused at the door. Now, he answered. Dodge City. Evelyn's eyes widened just a little. You said we weren't going back. Not like this, Jonah said. That was the difference. And before, he had been a man running from a town. Now he was a man walking back into it with a reason. And that changes everything. He stepped outside again, looking toward where Dodge City sat in the distance, quiet under the night sky, hiding whatever it had buried under wood and dust. If what Evelyn said was true, then that jail wasn't just a building. It was a door. And Jonah Vale had a feeling that once he opened it, there would be no closing it again. Because some things don't stay buried. Not when the wrong person starts digging. And come morning, Jonah wasn't going back as a stranger. He was going back as a man who already knew something was waiting for him. Something that remembered him. So the question wasn't whether Dodge City had changed. The question was, would it still recognize the man it once tried to bury? Morning came hot and fast. Kansas didn't wait for anyone to feel ready. Jonah was already up before the sun cleared the horizon. He had the horse saddled, water filled, and his coat back on like a man stepping into something he couldn't turn away from. Evelyn came out of the shack a few minutes later. She looked better. Not strong, but steady. That was enough. They didn't talk much on the ride in. Didn't need to. Dodge City showed itself the way it always did. Slow at first, then all at once. Low buildings, dust in the air, wagons rolling, men talking like nothing in the world had changed. That was the thing about towns like this. They could hide anything, as long as people kept acting normal. Jonah didn't ride down the main street. He cut around the back, past the livery stable, keeping to the edges where fewer eyes watched. Evelyn stayed close, head down, hat low. They stopped at a small boarding house tucked behind a row of shops. Jonah knocked once. The door opened just enough for a woman to look out. Martha Bell. She was older now, lines on her face deeper, eyes sharper than most men in town. She looked at Jonah for a long second, then let out a breath like she had been expecting him for years. Well, she said quietly. You took your time. Jonah gave a small nod. Had to be sure it was worth coming back. Martha's eyes shifted to Evelyn. And this is the reason, she asked. Yes, Jonah said. Martha stepped aside. Then you better get in before someone decides to care. She said, inside was simple, clean, safe enough. Martha gave Evelyn a seat, poured her something warm, and didn't ask too many questions at first, and that was why Jonah trusted her. She knew when to listen. Evelyn spoke after a moment. Told her just enough. Not everything, but enough for Martha's face to harden. I've seen girls like you pass through, Martha said. Always in a hurry, always with some story about work waiting somewhere else. She looked at Jonah. I knew it didn't sit right. She added, just didn't know how deep it ran. It runs through the jail, Jonah said. That got her attention. Martha didn't speak right away. She just stared at the girl, like she was seeing every other one who passed through that door and never came back. That was when it stopped sounding like a story and started feeling like something folks had already chosen to ignore. Martha leaned back slightly. That's a bold claim. It's the truth, Evelyn said, quieter but firm. Martha studied her, long enough to see she wasn't guessing. Then you've got a problem bigger than one bad sheriff, Martha said. Jonah nodded. I know. He didn't sit long, didn't drink, didn't relax. Men like him didn't get that luxury when the past came calling. I need to talk to Klein, he said. Martha frowned. The preacher. He writes letters, Jonah said. Work letters. People trust him. Martha gave a slow nod. They do. Then he knows something, Jonah said. Evelyn looked up. I saw his name, she said, on the papers before they moved us. That settled it. Jonah stood. I'll go tonight, he said. You're not going alone, Evelyn said. Jonah looked at her. For a moment, he almost said no, almost told her to stay where it was safe, but he saw something in her eyes. Not fear. Not anymore. Purpose. You can walk, he asked. I can, she said. Then you keep up, Jonah replied. That was as close to agreement as she was getting. Night came down over Dodge City with the same quiet weight it always had. Lamps lit up one by one. Voices dropped lower. The town didn't sleep, but it pretended to. The church sat near the edge of town. Small, plain, the kind of place people went when they wanted answers they couldn't find anywhere else. Jonah didn't believe in easy answers, but he believed in men cracking under pressure. He pushed the door open. Inside, it was quiet. Reverend Amos Klein stood near the front, like he had been waiting. Jonah Vale, he said softly. I wondered if you'd come back. Jonah didn't waste time. You've been writing letters, he said. Sending girls into work that doesn't exist? Klein's face tightened. I write what I'm asked to write, he said. That's not an answer, Jonah replied. Evelyn stepped forward. You remember Rose Hart, she asked. That name hit hard. Klein looked at her like he had seen a ghost. I remember, he said. Where is she, Evelyn asked. Klein didn't answer, didn't need to. His silence said enough. Jonah stepped closer. You knew, he said. Klein's voice broke just a little. I told myself I didn't know, he said. That's how men like me sleep at night. But I knew enough to stop writing those letters, and I didn't. That's not better, Jonah said. Klein closed his eyes for a second, then turned toward a small desk. He opened a drawer and pulled out an old book. A ledger. Worn, used. I kept names, he said. Dates. Movements. I told myself I needed proof. Jonah took the book, flipped a few pages. It was all there. Not neat, not official, but real. Before Jonah could say another word, the door behind them slammed open. Boots hit the floor hard. Caleb Pike stood there, arm bandaged, face full of hate. You should have stayed gone, he said. And behind him, more footsteps, more guns. Jonah didn't turn fast. He didn't need to. He already knew this was never going to stay quiet. And now the question wasn't about proof anymore. It was about getting out alive. Because once the law walks into a church with guns drawn to see, there's only one thing left to decide. Who's walking out and who isn't. Caleb Pike didn't wait. He fired first. The shot tore through the quiet of the church, loud and ugly, splintering wood near Jonah's shoulder. People like to think churches were safe places. Out here, they were just buildings with thinner walls. Jonah moved. His shoulder burned from the earlier shot, and this time he felt it slow him down. He wasn't the man he used to be. But he didn't need to be, not fast like a young man, precise like someone who had done this too many times. He stepped to the side, grabbed the edge of a wooden bench, and tipped it hard. The bench crashed between him and the doorway, buying him half a second. That was all he needed. He fired once, clean. Caleb's gun hand jerked back, the shot going wild into the ceiling. Plaster rained down like dust in a storm. Back, Jonah said, low but firm. Evelyn didn't freeze. That mattered. She moved when he moved, ducking behind the side aisle, pulling Reverend Klein with her. The old man stumbled, clutching his ledger like it weighed more than it should. 2 more men pushed in behind Caleb, deputies or men wearing the look of one. Didn't matter. They came in shooting. Jonah kept low, using the bench, the posts, the narrow space. He didn't chase shots. He waited for them. One mistake, one clean angle, another shot. Another man dropped. The third hesitated. That was the difference between a man doing a job and a man realizing he might die doing it. Jonah used that pause. He moved forward, fast this time, closing the distance, driving his shoulder into the man's chest, knocking him back through the doorway and into the dirt outside. Silence followed. Short, sharp, broken only by breathing. Jonah stood there for a second, gun steady, eyes on the street. No rush of townsfolk. No help coming. Just dust and distance. That told him something else. Rusk didn't want a crowd. Not yet. He wanted this handled quiet. That gave Jonah a little time. Not much. He turned back inside. Evelyn was on her feet, holding Klein upright. The old man looked worse now. Shaken more than hurt, but still holding that ledger like it was the last honest thing he owned. We can't stay, Jonah said. Nobody argued. They moved out the side door into the narrow path behind the church. Jonah led, checking corners, listening for boots, for voices, for anything that didn't belong. Dodge City still looked normal. That was the strange part. A wagon rolled past at the end of the street. A man laughed somewhere. A dog barked. Life going on, like nothing had just happened inside that church. That's how towns hide things. Jonah guided them back to Martha's place. Quick, quiet. Once inside, the door shut hard behind them. Martha took one look and didn't ask questions. "Tell me what we're dealing with," she said. Jonah set the ledger on the table. "This," he said. Martha opened it, flipped a few pages. Her face changed, not shock. Something colder. "I knew," she said slowly. "Didn't know this much, but I knew something was wrong." Evelyn stepped closer. "My sister," she said. "Her name's in there." Martha turned the pages again. Stopped. There it was. Rose Hart. A date. A mark beside it. Transferred west. Evelyn's breath caught. "She's alive," she said, almost to herself. Jonah didn't say anything right away. He had seen marks like that before. Sometimes they meant alive. Sometimes they meant moved somewhere worse. "We'll find her," he said finally. It wasn't a promise. It was a direction. Martha closed the book. "What's the plan?" she asked. Jonah leaned on the table, thinking, not rushing, not guessing. "They're moving them," he said. "Soon. After what happened tonight. Rusk won't wait." Martha nodded. "Wagon has to be," Jonah said. "Too risky any other way." Evelyn looked up. "They said early, before sun." That fit. Jonah straightened. "Then we don't wait either," he said. He looked at Martha. "I need 2 men," he said. "Ones who still remember what right looks like." Martha gave a small, dry smile. "That list's shorter than it used to be," she said, "but I know a couple." She grabbed her shawl and moved for the door. "I'll get 'em," she added. Jonah turned to Evelyn. "You stay here," he said. She shook her head right away. "No." He held her gaze. This isn't the same as before, he said. This gets worse before it gets better. I know, she said. That's why I'm not staying behind. Jonah studied her. Same look as before. Not fear. Choice. He gave a small nod. Then stay close, he said. That was enough. Time moved faster after that. Martha returned with 2 older ranchers, men who didn't talk much but looked like they had seen enough to know when to stop looking away. Jonah laid it out simple. No speeches, no big plan. They move a wagon before sun, he said. From the jail, the men nodded. They understood that. Everyone did. Jonah picked up the ledger again, ran his hand over the worn cover. Years ago, he had lost everything because the truth wasn't strong enough to stand on its own. This time he had something real, names, dates, proof. But proof didn't mean much if it got buried again. He looked toward the direction of the jail. Not far, just a few streets, same place, same walls, different night. Once we go in, Jonah said quietly, more to himself than anyone else, there's no quiet way out. No one argued, because they all knew. This wasn't about one girl anymore. This was about tearing open something the town had been sitting on for too long. And when something like that breaks loose, it doesn't stop easy. Jonah stepped toward the door, hand resting near his gun. Mind already inside that jail? Because if Rusk was moving them before sunrise, then whatever was under that building wouldn't stay hidden much longer. And the next time Jonah walked through those doors, he wouldn't be looking for answers. He'd be walking straight into the truth. The only question left was, what else was waiting down there? Besides chains and names no one ever came back for, Jonah didn't wait for sunrise. He moved before it. The sky was still dark when they reached the back of the jail. The same place Jonah had walked through years ago, wearing a badge, believing it meant something. Now it was just wood and lies. The old coal door was still there. Just like Klein said, half hidden, rarely used, easy to ignore if you didn't know where to look. Jonah opened it slow. No sound, just darkness underneath. He went first. Evelyn followed. Then Martha's men. The air below was thick, still, wrong in a way that didn't need explaining. Chains hung from beams. Old blankets lay in corners. And there, behind a rough wooden barrier, were 2 girls, alive, barely. Evelyn rushed forward, dropping to her knees beside them. One of them looked up, eyes empty at first, then slowly filled with something close to hope. Jonah didn't stay as still long, 'cause outside, wheels were already moving. The wagon, right on time. They got the girls out fast. No speeches, no wasted seconds. Martha's men led them through the back, into the alley, away from the jail. Jonah stayed behind. He knew Rusk would come back, and he did. Boots hit the ground outside, fast, angry. Rusk stepped into the doorway, gun already drawn. You should have stayed gone, he said. Jonah stood in the half-light, calm, steady. You should have done your job, Jonah replied. That was all it took. The shots came quick. Rusk fired first. Jonah moved. Not faster. Smarter. He had been in this room before. He knew the angles, the shadows, the way sound bounced off the walls. He used it. One step, one breath, one shot. Rusk staggered, didn't fall right away. Men like him never do. He looked at Jonah. Something broken behind his eyes now. You think this changes anything, Rusk said. Jonah didn't answer with words, 'cause it already had. Outside, voices were rising, people waking up, seeing. For the first time, this wasn't hidden. Rusk dropped. The badge hit the floor after him, and just like that, the law in Dodge City changed hands. Not because a man died, but because the truth finally stood where everyone could see it. Evelyn found Rose, not far from the wagon, weak, but alive. That moment didn't need words. Just 2 sisters holding on like they almost lost the chance. Jonah stood a little distance away. Same as always, not stepping into the moment, just making sure it could happen. Later, when the sun came up over Dodge City, nothing looked different. Same streets, same buildings, same dust. But something had shifted. People saw things they didn't see before, or maybe they just stopped pretending. Jonah didn't take the badge back. Not yet. Some things take time to rebuild. And a man who lost his name once doesn't rush to wear it again. Evelyn walked up to him, still hurting, still tired, but standing. That mattered. You could stay, she said. Jonah looked out at the town, then back at her. Maybe, he said. Not a promise, but not a no. And sometimes, that's enough. It was the kind of quiet that only comes after something heavy finally settles. Because a man doesn't need a badge to do the right thing. He just needs to stop pretending he didn't see it. Most people don't step in, not because they're bad, but because it's easier not to. Easier to believe the badge, easier to look away, easier to say it's not your problem. But every once in a while, someone stops. Someone looks closer. Someone says one thing that changes everything. She can't walk anymore, and from that moment on, they don't walk away either. Now let me tell you something, just between us. I've seen stories like this my whole life. Different names, different towns, same choice. You either stand there and watch, or you step in and carry something that isn't yours. And yeah, it costs you. It always does. But so does doing nothing. So here's a question worth thinking about. If you were standing on that road that day, would you have kept riding, or would you have stepped down like Jonah did? Because that answer, that's the kind of thing that shapes a man over time. And if a story like this stayed with you,
If it made you think, even just a little, then take a second, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment.
I read them. Every one I can. And I keep finding stories worth telling, just like this one. Now, before you go, I want to say this clear and honest. This story is gathered and retold from different sources with a few added details to bring out the lesson, the meaning, and the human side of it. The images you see are created using AI to help carry the feeling and bring you closer to the moment. And the title and thumbnail are there to help tell that feeling in a way words alone sometimes can't. But the choice inside the story, that part is real, always has been, and always will be. So I'll leave you with one last thought. If the law ever stops protecting the weak, then who do you think it was meant to serve in the first place?